Welcome, welcome to Associated Black Charities May Equity at Work. My name is Chrissy Thornton. I am the president and CEO of Associated Black Charities, and we are so excited about our ability to bring you this monthly webinar series where we tackle all of the issues, barriers, challenges, and obstacles that are keeping Black professionals in the workplace from reaching their optimal potential. And today, I have the wonderful privilege of talking about breaking barriers in career advancement for Black women. Yes, yes. While conversations about workplace equity have grown, Black women continue to face significant systemic obstacles to advancing their careers. What do we say? Black women are the most disrespected people walking the planet, right? So this is from unequal access to mentorship and sponsorship to pay gaps and workplace bias. The road to leadership for Black women is filled with challenges and invisible barriers. And while discussions around equity and inclusion were increasing, Black women remain one of the most underrepresented and overlooked groups in leadership pipelines. And so today we will talk about this. We're going to talk about the systemic barriers that we face. We're going to unpack the emotional labor and toll of navigating predominantly white institutions in many cases. And we're going to hopefully come up with some real world strategies to advocate for, support, and uplift Black women in the workplace. And today I have the honor of having two wonderful professionals, Black women, beautiful Black women, joining me for the webinar. And I'm going to ask them to come on screen at this time. Welcome, welcome, Tamika and Diamond. I am so excited to have both of you here with us, and I would love to give you the opportunity not only to introduce yourselves and tell us as much or as little as you would like, but to talk about why today's conversation is so important for you, why you feel the urgency of the conversation. We'll start with you, Tamika. Make sure you guys are unmuted, and then we'll go to you, Diamond.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate just having the opportunity to share some of my experience and my barriers. And real quick side note, like whoever wrote it for me, like I'm looking for applications for a spouse. So if you guys can work on that profile and get those applications out, I'm sure we can get me one by the end of the year. But anyway, so Dr. Tamika Payton, my entire life, I've been the only or the other. It's just the story of my life. It's something that it took a long time for me to embrace, but I have. And now that I've kind of learned how to sit in that space, sharing that with other people is so important to me. Like usually when we say psychometrics, everyone looks around like what that is. So we'll talk about that later. So not even in a profession where people don't even know what it is, being a person of color and then being a woman is it's just such a space to navigate. And I had the opportunity of seeing another person to look like me. And so I know that exposure is very key. And just to talk to individuals and make sure that they know they're not alone. This is a space we have to navigate together. And so I just am honored to do my part.
Thank you so much. We're excited to talk to you today. And Diamond.
Yes, I'm Diamond Frazier. I'm the founder of Better Than Yesterday Mentoring, where we teach personal development and financial literacy to underserved communities, and more specifically to our Black youth and those that are in their community and environment. It is so essential to know who we are as Black people, how the world sees us, and what needs to be done for us to be the best version of ourselves. And I'm so excited about this conversation because I have been at the side of systemic barriers, not only from whites that are in historically white infrastructures, but the Black people that are in position that can reach their hand back to help. And so I've been hindered in many directions, whether it's from my own or whether there's systems in place that are not for me. So I'm really ready to have this conversation.
Yes, well, let's get started. I'm going to give you some facts. And if you are watching today or you're here and you can comment in the chat, make sure you contribute your lived experience. We need to hear from you. We need to know when we're, walking down your street too. Also, make sure you ask any questions as our panelists strive to lend their lived experience to today's conversation. So here's some facts about Black women. It says Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the US. We also lead the nation in business ownership growth. We have record representation in corporate boardrooms. In 2023, more Black women are now holding board seats in Fortune 500 companies than ever before. Put me on the list for that. Black women, as we know, have the highest workforce participation rate among all women in America. Historically, consistently, over 60% of Black women are active in the workforce. And Black women are among the most educated demographic in the United States. So over the past decade, Black women hold the records in college enrollment, graduation, higher percentages of Black women who hold associates, bachelor's, and advanced degrees, and they outpace Black men and Hispanic women in that category. So all of that excellence, all of that wonderfulness, and yet we still face significant barriers in career advancements, specifically in traditional workplaces. What do you think about that?
Well, Chrissy, it's so much to unpack there, right? Because I too kind of hit all of those boxes, right? Entrepreneurs, sat in board seats, right? The higher advanced degrees, all that great stuff. And like we're still trying to prove ourselves. Like, really? Like what's the problem here? But I can speak to entrepreneurship specifically, being the CEO of two organizations, three if we count my nonprofit. I felt I needed to do it because I wasn't getting seats at the table. And so I kind of went to that path. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make my own table, right? If you don't want to acknowledge my strengths, my expertise in certain areas, I'll meet you there and I'll just bring a team behind me. So I think that that has become such a pathway for us because we were tired of fighting and begging for a seat at others' tables just to be recognized. We're working twice as hard to get half the money or half the recognition. I think a lot of us saw entrepreneurship as our way out. And then, like most things we do, we get there and we excel. And then I think it just took on. So that's the lens that's what I connect to when I think about why we are leading the pack in entrepreneurship.
I'm
Diamond, any
so
thoughts?
Yes, I'm so happy you said that because it's very much in alignment with what I was thinking, where in the workspace, because we aren't given opportunity, because the pay has been clearly a gap there. And I found that out just by asking my peers and then being transparent. Hey, how much do you make? Because it's been a topic of discussion where, hey, that's not something you should be talking about in the workplace.
Mhm.
And that has been the reason why I've been underpaid for so long because I didn't know. I just made the assumption that, hey, if we have the same type of background, if we have the same, um, amount of years in the game, that we neck and neck, and it just truly was not that. And so when you have organizations that aren't built for us or by us, then it does force you to go and start something on your own. And as you were talking, it was reminding me of the movie Beauty Shop with Queen Latifah when she just wanted to start her own salon. And even though she went the entrepreneur route, she had struggled just getting funding. And so when she did get the funding, she did have it up and running. She had the white man from the previous shop doing so much to tear that down. And so we've had our own businesses where we had Wall Street and hey, we're doing our own thing over here. That's what you wanted us to do. And then you come find us and destroy everything where now we're relying back on you. So I think it's a beautiful thing that us as Black women have been doing what we have to do at this point to create our own infrastructure to not only have sustainability for ourselves to make sure that we are getting our worth and then we're also creating opportunities for others just like us who have been in organizations who have hindered us from maxing out in our full potential.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the barriers. Let's name them so that we can talk about how we can sidestep and overcome them. Lack of mentorship and sponsorship. And I know, Diamond, you'll have something to say about that with your organization. We talked about pay inequity. I know for a fact I have helped some of my white male counterparts get hired, have trained them, and then only to discover that they were making more than me salary-wise. Biased promotional practices, stereotypes and biases, especially for Black women. We talk about the angry Black woman stereotype, how aggressive we are, how loud we are, opinionated, and all the things, the harmful stereotypes that creep into the perception of the decision makers that hold us back. And then just being overlooked. I can add a couple more. What do you think about those and any more you want to add as far as challenges? And please put them in the chat too if you're watching.
No, for me, one thing that I would add is just opportunity, right? Like exposure. And in my nonprofit, we say you can't pick option C if you only know A and B. So for our young people, for even our professionals, like before I got into the field, nobody ever told me what a psychometrician was. Like that's just not, yeah, be a doctor, be a lawyer, but there are some professions like hedge funds and things like that. We just don't even, we're not exposed to it. Like no one was at my kitchen table talking about a hedge fund or an annuity when I was growing up, right? That wasn't something that I came across until I happened to land two very important, I didn't know at the time they were important jobs, but I worked for American Express and I worked for an insurance brokerage firm. So I'm like, oh, you told me this is how you leverage life insurance and this is how you do some of these things, or study abroad program. That stuff is like way out for some of us in our community. So I think the primary barrier is just knowing this stuff exists and then having that mentorship or someone to even put you on that track that this is an option, this is something you can explore. And then you get hit with some of the other barriers you mentioned, Chrissy.
Thoughts?
I could really go down everything that you listed. One of the things I will say is with roles in leadership. And so, when I understood within a company the different levels of position, so you have implementation, which is lower level, which I've seen myself in my career so much, just this hard worker that's doing everything right, going above and beyond in that role, and just cannot push to be able to be seen in executive leadership. And I remember there was a position, a senior position that I felt like I was more than qualified from a space of being able to coach others to then do the same job that I was doing. And I went into that interview and I just knew I was going to get it. But I ended up getting it to someone, God forgive me, she wasn't as competent in the role, white woman, and it was white people that was interviewing. And initially, I didn't think it was a race thing. Like, I'm like, it's just not making sense to me. But truthfully, when you are applying for leadership roles and a leader is looking at who's going to make a senior, whatever, they're picking their coworkers. And so if I'm not the person you want to do coffee with, I'm not the person you want to hang out with, then you're not going to give me the role. You're going to give it someone that has to report to you all the time. You have to see them all the time. You want to like them. You want to be around them. And I used to go into the workspace on some, let me bury my head, get my job done, and I'm going to leave. But I really started realizing how important relationships are. And even if you do pander and to those types of relationships, if you're just not the friend that they want to have and you don't look like them, then I just don't want you in that space. And also, I've had Black women that are in position that I seek for mentorship because I feel like, hey, you made it there. You are where I want to be. Well, I don't need you to put me in the position. I do respect nepotism. I don't need you to put me there. If you can just give me the information, the guidance, the resources to help me
Access.
navigate that, the access, that would be so great for me so I can go and pull up the next and pull up the next. And we can start seeing some, familiar faces in these spaces. But
Why don't
I
we do that?
fear,
Mm.
fear that there is only room for me. And if I recognize talent in you and I bring you up, then my position is going to be compromised because there's only one seat for me. And
Mhm.
I'm happy to be the only Black person, maybe the only Black woman in this space. And if you come up, it might not be the room for the two of us. So I would
Mhm.
prefer you to stay where you're at to ensure that I'm going to be where I am. Instead of, if you're in an executive space, one thing you should be great at is being able to identify talent. You can't be everything to everybody. So if there is someone that's really great, then why not pull them up? That will take something off your plate. Put them in a space where they can thrive. And instead of having the mindset, the scarcity mindset that, hey, it could only be me, well, let's move a couple of seats and we're going to add one for her and she could be there too. So I've definitely been undermined in meetings with Black women, and I still will never turn my back on a Black woman. I'm a child of one, I'm a sister of one, I'm a friend of one. And so, but I would like to see us do different and be able to help. And sometimes that fear is what hinders. And that's why some of us might go start our own and give opportunities so we don't have to worry about giving up our seats.
Yeah, that is such a real thing. Tamika?
Chrissy, and I know like I have positions of leaderships in other organizations, and sometimes it's I can't, right? Like I got this seat and I'm advocating for my sister, like, oh, you should call Tasha. Oh, yeah, she's the one, but they don't. Even if I fight, because I think that's again why it just has to be strength in numbers, because me alone, I can make some noise. but sometimes I'm overlooked. The same, like I kind of, we just put you on here. Now you want to bring somebody else. Like there's this fear of us sort of taking over. And so even in positions where I've advocated for women, right? Because I would hate to think, oh, well, she didn't try to help. No, I'm like yelling your name to the mountaintop, but it's falling on deaf ears because
The
I'm just a
system is not going
minority.
to allow what they perceive as gang mentality, right? Like gang, so they're not going to put necessarily, it's not built to support many of us who are then going to support one another and resource one another, because that's not how the system is built. I have a third vantage point to what we're talking about, and that is throughout the course of my career, I have come across some specifically younger Black women who I have tried to help and mentor, who I have said, listen, attach yourself to me and like, let's go, right? Because I believe in that as well. And I've gotten pushback from some of them who are like, they think they already have arrived, right? So there's that too, right? Like sometimes you can't help people who aren't positioning themselves emotionally and, to receive the help, to know that they have growth. Like I always keep a mentor. I don't care what my title is, where I think I have gotten. I always keep a mentor. I always keep people that I can turn to for guidance. I know I don't know it all, but I also have experienced a lot of younger Black women who I can't help because their mindset development is not to where it needs to be to pull them along. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And so I'm, my last degree, I'm an HBC, Go Bears, Morgan. And I have a pipeline of interns just come through our organization. And I've had really good experiences. Some of my team members may be on the call. I have great experience, but I also have had one or two employees that like, well, who are you talking to? Or my auntie said, or my professor said, and it's like, okay, then well, best way for you, like, good luck. So it is difficult, and I do think they have just bought onto that narrative that a lot of other
So we
people
have to compete.
that we
We
have
have to compete.
you're not trying to help me and you're really trying to hold me down and you're criticizing me too much. No, I'm telling you, like that opening is a little too open for the public. Like if we were going out on Saturday, wear that. But in this space, button that up a little bit. And so they can't receive it because they've heard another narrative already. And so I'm not gonna fight harder than you are. So then I'm
That's
fighting
right.
a narrative and I just don't worry about it then. Good luck.
So I'm going to stop before we go forward and take the question in the chat. It says, what should someone look for in a mentor? And the person says that she thought she had good mentors, but maybe has realized they're not the best. I'm going to interject and say that I was always taught that you shouldn't take advice from people whose life you don't want. Right? So I seek out mentors who I see moving the way I want to move, who have mastered skills that I do not yet have, who are in places and in seats that I aspire to. But too often people raise their hand as mentor and they are a hot mess, right? Like they they don't have anything to offer you because they're struggling still in there. So I think that is kind of like my parameters. What do you all think? What should someone look for in a mentor?
I completely agree with that. I will say the significance of having someone that's in the position that you want to be in, they not only know, how to get there, but there is no real competition because they're already there. When
Mm-hmm.
you go and get mentorship from someone that's on the same level of you as you, whatever capacity it is, it's still, some competition there because, hey, I'm not there yet. So I don't want to take the time to help pull you up to where I'm at or like pull you with me if I'm not even where I want to be. So you definitely want to make sure that they are already where you want to be and maybe more settled in their career because those that are still hungry and still fighting, it might not be a space of competition. It might be, I just don't have the capacity
I'm
to help
out.
you right
Mm-hmm.
now because I got to be everywhere and I still got to make a name for myself. But when I get there and get settled, then I'll get you. And then maybe even those that are in the same industry, but just in a different type of company that don't even touch, like don't have anything to do with each other. They can talk from a different perspective. Again, there's lack of competition there. It's not scarcity. And then definitely those that have something of their own, if they've already created their own infrastructure, if they are a CEO of their company and the business has been sustainable, then that's something that you would want to look to as well, for sure.
Yeah, I know. Definitely looking for someone that you want to model your life like. Like my first mentor, she didn't know she was my mentor. It was like 10, 20 years later that I told her, girl, I was watching you my whole life. Like, I was a teenage, you were a teenage mom. And like I saw that's how Miss Linda did it. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Like I hadn't even come across the concept of mentor. I just watched her and she had a life for her boys that I was like, I want to be a young mom that can provide that for my boys. The other thing I think Diamond hit on too is capacity. And so if you're looking for a mentor, they may not have the space and capacity. So you got to figure out what you can get from the person at the time. And if they come back and say, hey, I don't have the space, well, can I just watch you from afar? When you see, like it may not be structured mentorship, which is what we talk about in Women in Measurement. It may not be, the one-to-one sit down coffees, but if I invite you with me somewhere, put your shoes on and let's go. Like
That's
Diamond,
right.
shout out, just kind of told me the same thing, right? Like I can't make a formal introduction all the time. But if I put you in the room, come in the room. If I send you an invite, if I send you, oh, look, this webinar, that is my mentorship. Again, from my lens, it's exposure. These type of events are happening. You need to be in that room. And so be comfortable understanding that mentorship doesn't have to be traditional. It can have a
Absolutely.
different form.
If I was to share with you all who I thought had mentored me most, it is somebody who does not know she's functioning as my mentor. And I had the opportunity to get hired by and work for this woman for about 4 weeks. So 4 weeks into my being there on a job, she resigned and went somewhere else. And I was devastated because one weekend she had already changed my life. I remember being on a call talking about something that I wanted to do. And I remember saying, I'm going to try to do this, that's another. And she interrupted me publicly. And she was like, try is not a strategy. And that statement changed my whole life. And the way she showed up was unapologetic and aggressive, and she was well dressed, and she was, and I have worked with her for them 4 weeks. She done moved on, and I have watched her every since. I've watched her style, her class, how she shows up, the moves she makes career-wise. And so, yeah, I think too often we're waiting for people to sit with us and have the coffee and eat the lunch, and everybody doesn't have time for that. I'm going to ask a quintessential question for today's conversation, because we know being Black women in workplaces can create stress and burnout and feelings of overwhelm and all that. Do you all code switch? You look tired. Just answer the question.
Chrissy, okay, and so I'm a little older. That's all I say. And so I've gotten to a place where I stopped. You just gonna take me as is, right? But I know in my early career, in my 20s, we did the singing at Madeira. Hello, good morning. Because somebody told me that sounds perfect. I don't know where I got that foolishness from, but I used to. And so there's still a degree to it, but not as much. So if someone invites me, I'm coming up authentically, whether you ask me or not, because you knew who I was. If you invited me, you knew what you were gonna get. And I do think I've learned to embrace that as my strength. So really quickly, in one of our boardrooms, I was in a meeting and the guy was just bewildered because he was like, I've never seen two Tamikas in one room.
Wow.
Like my name Bonquisha Nanika or something. Like
Yeah.
everywhere was two of me growing up in my block. But just the concept that, okay, they don't even know there are multiple of us. And so you have to just go in and be you, because they're bewildered by the fact that there are multiple people. And so if you spend a lot of energy trying to code switch and be something that you're not, there are two Karens, two Steves in the room, but you're surprised that there's two Tamikas. So let me just be Tamika that I am, and you take this and do what you like with it. And that was probably the most liberating thing ever, when I got to a point where I'm gonna wear my braids or my twist. I'm just not doing it anymore, because it is tiring. It's too much work. And I think we can minimize our greatness and our expertise if we're trying too hard to fit in their world. I'm not in your world. I'm just not in your world. And I can't be. I can never be a white woman. I can never be an Asian woman. So all I can be is who I am. And you just got to kind of take it or leave it.
So I'm going to hear from Diamond, but also in the chat, if you've code switched or have experience with code switching, let us know about that. Diamond, I want to hear about you. Code switching?
Oh, yes. I admire both of you, just where you are in your career. And I will say for you, Chrissy, you show up unapologetically Black. And
Oh,
I
that took a long journey. I'll tell you,
I
but we'll hear from you.
admire that, because while I don't change how I speak and I don't alter what I wear, I will mask how I feel about things. So if you do comment on my hair or you do say something tone deaf into Black people, instead of correcting you or educating you in that moment, I digress because I am fearful or am working to be out of that because I don't want to claim that of the repercussions of that. And I won't walk in the room just confident about my Blackness. I am Black, but I might not confidently speak on certain things because I don't want to offend you and I don't want to bother you and I don't want to upset you or feel like, I'm going to, I, I work for somebody right now. So I just don't want my livelihood dangled over my head because I said something that made you uncomfortable, but really it was empowerment for me. So I'm still working on navigating that and saying, hey, like, me showing up for myself and advocating for my people and who I am shouldn't be a disruption to you in any way. But listen, it's a work in progress.
Well, I will share because it's interesting that you said I show up unapologetically Black. I do quite a bit of code switching still. And the thing is, I code switched through most of my career because it was in white spaces. And I thought too, like when I got to ABC, I'd be able to lay a lot of that down. But I have a whole lot of stakeholders, right? And they all don't look like me. And so actually my prowess at code switching, as stressful and horrible as it's been, has created a superpower in me being able to be so flexible because I can literally walk in and adjust myself to the moment, not sacrificing or being ashamed of who I am. And sometimes the moment calls for the rah-rah, no matter who I'm in front of. But that also comes with hierarchy and getting into position where you don't have to be, your livelihood is not challenged by how you show up. And so I think on the top of everything else, Black women face this, this tug about being authentic or being, acceptable. And we always have to walk that fine line. Now I'm here. I have all Black staff. I'm surrounded by, Black supporters and in Black spaces. And my new code switch is excellence. I need y'all to code switch into some excellence because I also know that when we get into Black spaces, sometimes our authenticity will be us letting the guard down to the fact that we no longer have to show up in as much excellence. And I'm experiencing that now and battling that now in the different spaces I'm in. And so, yeah, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot to navigate and to do all the things. Let's talk about Black men. Because the other day I was thinking about it. I'm an almost 50-year-old Black woman navigating, a whole career. And I'm thinking about all the things I've done while working, right? Like the things everybody does. I went to school and showed up at work, but then I also experienced pregnancy in the workplace. I also experienced needing childcare and raising my children, and now like these hot flashes and all these other kind of things I walk through the door with. We already as women have to carry so much into the workplace to overcome, and then as Black women, it's compounded. How do Black men play into acknowledging our value and supporting our, our acceleration in the workplace? Or do they?
We need a whole nother panel,
We
right?
need another hour. Yeah, we need another hour.
Okay,
Yeah.
not going political, but in this climate, I remember having very like heated conversations with some of my brothers that like, what this person did for us, and I'm, it's everybody doing something for a Black woman, and I'm like sitting in disbelief, like we have been holding you down and clapping for you for
Generations.
When it's my time to shine, you got the audacity to say, what have I done for you? You had two Supreme Court people that look like you. I just got one yesterday. Like, what are you talking about? So but it had to be those tough conversations and a request to them. I need you to clap for me now. I need you to stand behind me. I hear all that stuff you're talking, but let me tell you personally what this means to me. And then on the flip side, let me tell you personally how this hurt me. I lost contracts. I had to cut my staff. And so you keep that rah-rah, but if you really support me the way you say you support me, your sister, your friend, you got to come off that. So I don't know who you got to go and sit and, clear your soul with, but don't you dare let another opportunity come where you can support a Black woman and you let someone get in your ear and tell you not to. And so it's their responsibility to me in our community. It's their job. And at this point, it's just the right thing to do because we've been holding them down. And so I think if they don't know that, then maybe as Black women, we have to tell them that because somebody else is telling them a different story.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts, Diamond?
So while I do agree with you, I feel like, yes, we have definitely held it down for Black men for sure. Will stand out, poster sign, all of that. And in some instances, it has not necessarily been reciprocated. However, I will say that we have a lot of support, maybe not always from Black men, but from a lot of people in general. Now, maybe some of the causes support them as well. It can be performative, but there are a lot of women's groups. There's a lot of Black women groups. There's a lot of support there for us emotionally, pregnancies. There's a lot of things in place, and it's just not the same if we're talking numerically for men. So while regardless of the lack of resources and support that they have, that shouldn't diminish uplifting us when we need it, because they should continue to be an ally. I can understand the other perspective of, hey, we don't have these same things. It's a Black girls rock, but it's not a Black boys rock. There's these, women empowerment events, but there's not a lot of men empowerment events. And so I get definitely where they're coming from. And even historically, Black men had to compete with white men. And so white man is more prone to giving a Black woman position, whether it is, hey, keep your Black people in check, if we look at the history of a Negro bed wench, but it's just not the same thing for a Black man. So yes, in certain political spaces, just because there's a lot of um I would say I'll say performative Christian principles that men do lead certain things, they will have a Black man when it comes to certain leadership positions or certain things in political parties, and not women, more so because of history and certain principles that they just kind of cherry pick from. But I think that I know that they need the same support that we do, and it's very much lacking on their side. But they shouldn't not support us because we have all this other support. We need you too, as we have you.
Yeah, actually, and it's also about acknowledgement. Would you be surprised for me to share with you that there are Black professional men, many who support me, hands down, in my role? There are also Black men who will reach down into my organization to reach out to my male employee as opposed to coming to me directly, or reach out to my other Black board members in a comfort level of talking to them. Those are, Black men who have adopted some of the tenets of white supremacy and some of the patriarchy around not seeing a woman, right, specifically a Black woman, in any other role other than their caregiver or other than their cheerleader, right? And so this is just, I have dealt with this since I've been at ABC, but just recently I just had an epiphany. And the epiphany was this. I'm gonna share with y'all for the first time. This is debut news, right? If you can't work with me directly, you can't work with ABC. That's where we're at, right? I don't care if you're white, green, Black man, brother, whatever the case is. And so we also, as Black women in the workforce, we have to constantly create boundaries and teach people how to treat us and how to regard us and all those things. So lots of challenges. We've talked about all of them. What are some strategies that we can use as Black women to break through some of this, right? Like networking is one of them. So let's start there and then see if you guys have other strategies to share.
Strategies for me, and Diamond and I were chatting this morning, and just being an introvert, and people go, "What?" Yes, if you stick me in a room, I am going to hug the wall all night. So a strategy
How
that
you gonna build relationships like that?
I know I'm working, and that's why it's a strategy. So it is something that I am truly keeping it like real with y'all. I am still working through that, and that again with my mentor, understanding that you are not going to be recognized by standing on the wall. Like you can't do that. And so if you're not comfortable, the strategy is be selective in the events, but put yourselves in position to get through some of these barriers. And so when you get the invite, you don't feel like going, but go anyway. Okay. Smile and nod, do what you need to do, but take advantage of the opportunities. And not religious, but T.D. Jakes said in one of his sermons that I happened to be listening to working out one day, that even Jesus needed a representative and a sponsor, right? He had John the Baptist. And so attach yourself to someone who's going to say your name when you're not in the room or invite you in the room. And so that would be sort of my top strategy. If I'd have known that in my 20s, I probably would be a different place in my 40s. Unfortunately, I didn't really understand that until my late 30s or 40s, that wait, I can make my own table, but I can still get a seat by attaching myself to the right people at the right time and just showing up.
Love that. Strategies, Diamond?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I will say those that position themselves as allies, we put them to the test. And so those that are in position to give position, we align with those. So while you can align with Black people that are in position, maybe to your point that there might not be a space for us or there might be a little competition, then you go to the white counterpart and that's your advocate and that's your sponsor. So while you can do a little repost of Black Lives Matter, show up for me because I'm actually doing the work to be in this space and I need you to, celebrate my name and advocate for me in my absence as well as in my presence and help me move. So definitely in that sense. And I like something that you said earlier, Chrissy, about trying. I used to have the thought process of, just try, just try. But when you try something, you're already saying, hey, I might
I
fail.
might not. Yep.
I might not do it. And I don't want to confidently say I'm going to do this thing and then be embarrassed when it doesn't happen. But when you truly commit to something, you will find every single way to make that thing happen. And so if it is a position that you want to be in to the workplace, then you don't accept no as the first answer. That's just not right now. And maybe that's not the company for you or that's not the space for you. God may have something way bigger, so the no could be protection. That rejection is just for your own good, or hey, don't play it small, it's something bigger for you. And so just paying attention to those signs, but definitely advocating for yourself, finding a sponsor that's actually already in those spaces, and then committing to whatever it is that you want. Because when you say you try, you half step, you put forth partial effort, and make sure you have faith as well, and really start to we really need to educate one another for sure. I used to not be a fan of history in school. I hated it. I didn't like regurgitating facts because I don't understand why I'm here and what's going on. And it wasn't a lot of history from our perspective and our angle. And so when we start really truly understanding what happened before us and why it happened and why it's not so far fetched, it's still showing up today, then your actions will start to pivot too, because now I see why things are the way they are. They still are this way, and at this point, then I have to move. And then once you know better, you definitely do better.
Absolutely. Another thing, and I got some advice early on coming into ABC, was to tell my own story and define my own narrative. Some of the research says, document your wins. Like, you are who you tell people you are. And I really have been manifesting that. I use my social media, as most people know, to document a lot of what I do, where I am, what I'm thinking, the good, some bad, some in the middle. And so I don't allow people to determine or make assumptions about me. I'm going to tell you exactly who I am, what's important to me. You're going to know where I am. You're going to feel like you know enough about me to trust me, and I'm going to be who I say I am. And so I think a lot of times we wait for people to give us, like Diamond, like you mentioned, give us an opportunity or tell us we're ready. I had a supervisor a couple of jobs ago. He was actually, you listening? He was a director and I was under him. And he was so proud of me and called me in and he said, you know what? He said, you have director potential. He said, I would think in about 10 years, you will become a director, like, executive director like I am. And he didn't mean any harm. So if you're listening, I'm telling the truth. But 3 months later, I had an equivalent position to his. I almost needed him to tell me it would take 10 years to get to where he was, to get me to look for something else and put myself in the position I knew I was ready for. But sometimes we allow people to put limitations on us. So I think as Black women, we have to hold firm to who we believe we are, what we believe we're capable of, because the world and other people, even those who are well-intentioned, will tell us what we can't do or when we can do things, and it is very self-limiting. Any thoughts on that? And then we'll move on to some other solutions.
Yes, very big thought on that. I've been in finance for 10 years, but I've never in the finance space have held any director or big leadership position. And I express this to those that are actually in the position and they're like, Diamond, it's only been 10 years. You know, it
Mm,
took me 15 years to even get to this space. And I'm like, okay, I understand what transpired for you during your day and your time, but I don't have to wait and I shouldn't have to wait for something that I'm ready for now. And so when you said that, it really resonated because people also sometimes want you to walk the same path
their
that they walk.
struggle, their
They want you to do
struggle.
that same struggle. And it's like,
Mhm.
hey, if there's a more efficient way, if there's a more effective way, if I don't have to wait, why wait? But it's like, no, you didn't go through what I had to go through. And it's like, you shouldn't even want that for me
Right,
if it doesn't have
right,
to happen.
exactly.
I think, Chrissy, and something you said, and again, I'm kind of getting comfortable. It's this kind of being over 40 thing is like, what? So I'm getting comfortable there. But we talked about this in my office once with my team. Why don't we sort of highlight ourselves more? And it's this concept of we were taught you don't brag,
The
you don't
humility.
boast, right? You know,
Yeah.
I'm a Southern girl. I'm from Miami, Florida. I'm a Southern belle, right? Like you don't do that. And one of my employees, Brienne, pointed out if you go far back and even into days when our people were enslaved, you certainly didn't want to highlight your skills or your attributes or your son's strength because that can be very detrimental to you, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh, you think you all that? Like I think about 12 years a slave, we throwing the soap at the lady, right? So it was either told not to do it or it was just taboo because it could bring you so much
Yeah,
harm. And so kind of breaking through that narrative that I can celebrate myself. I can be be proud of my accomplishments and share it, not bragging, but someone else needs to see it. Again, my whole
absolutely.
concept is exposure. And so if I don't tell young women or other women of my age, hey, this is what I'm doing, they may miss that opportunity because I didn't want to brag. I just go to the South.
And
It's not tricking if it's not bragging if
and then you have to be accountable to who you say you are. And so that's the thing. Sometimes we don't want to put out there who we are because then it creates accountability. So if I say I'm a facilitator, workshop presenter, I'm a public speaker, then I have to live up to that. If I say I'm professional, then I have to be reliable and in place and on time, and I have to show up in excellence and all those kind of things. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, you have to tell people who you are and who you believe you are and what your values are and tell them, what you're made of, but then you have to be that person too. And so sometimes that can help you get to the next level, creating your own goals for yourself and own commitments for yourself too. So we talked about building strong networks, aligning with allies and mentors, telling people who you are, documenting your wins. What about setting boundaries? So in the workplace, because a lot of times Black women, although we're denied advancement in large form, we are leaned upon to do more with less in the workplace, to outwork, to, take on projects often without credit and without attribution to our skill sets and stuff. Where do we set boundaries around those things? And can you do that without consequences in the workplace?
Ooh, that's a really great topic. Real quick to piggyback off of what you both said regarding um, not bragging, but speaking up to your accomplishments and actually rising to the occasion. One thing that I heard recently is when you omit information, you lie. And
Mm,
so when you hold back your accomplishments, you're lying about who you are. And so you really need to make sure that you're including that information and showing up like, hey, I'm great. I'm not just good. And so that made me say, "Oh, well, I don't wanna be no liar, so Imma make sure, you know, I'm telling y'all what's going on and creating my narrative and not allowing others to create that for me." And to answer your question, um, forgive me 'cause I done got so I got so excited. Can you run that back for me?
yeah, no, so we're talking about when can you say no? Can you not work twice as hard in the workplace and still expect to experience advancement? Do we have the privilege to do that? Because I know some of our counterparts can sign out at 4:57 and enjoy their families and do the least and have, make excuses for themselves, man, woman, or otherwise. But a lot of times Black women, either the expectation is set for ourselves or we set it for ourselves to work harder, with less support and to just get things done. But what happens when we, need to say no?
It's not really allowed. And
Mm,
I'll say this from experience. I used to want to be everything for everybody. So if you ask Diamond to do it, she's going to get the job done. And cared so much about perception. I wanted to be known as the one that's going to get it done, that's going to do it. Just keep adding to her plate. She's going to get it done. While I'm over there suffering in silence, I'm still getting it done because at least I know that they feel like they can rely on me. But I didn't know I was being taken advantage of. And
mhm.
so even till this day, if I'm asked to do a task, you're not really asking me. It's the illusion of choice. Because if I tell you no, there's going to be pushback like, okay, well, maybe you can't do it right now. So when can we put this on your calendar? So again, when you're working for other people and depending on who you're working for, you have to conform to their guidelines, their expectation, and their regulations. So it is very difficult to be comfortable to say, hey, I don't have the capacity to take care of that right now. I'm working on something else. And I've tried that. And it's okay. Well, if you can't do it today, then it could be taken care of Monday. I've already looked at your schedule and saw it's fairly open. So, very interesting space to be in. And it goes back to the statistics that you listed before that, hey, we overwork, we overserve. The compensation doesn't equate to that. And even when you have really high compensation, it shouldn't be you're doing so much work. It's, hey, I have vision, I have plans, I have strategic things to put in place. Um, but there's a reason why we push to start our own, so that we can have flexibility. I can say I'm not working on Friday. I can leave a couple of minutes early. And I do watch it happen for counterparts, and it's just not the same across the board.
Think a strategy I had to learn, and again, wish I had known this in my early 20s. The questioning technique. So when you don't feel like you have the space, a strategy for us is I can't tell you, but I can question it and I can position it. Is it possible that Susan can do it because I have so and so and so? Is there anything else? I have this prioritized. Is there anything you would like me to move to the side to accomplish to get your project in? And so sometimes just having that additional strategy for if I'm in a space that I can't tell you no, I'm going to question you until like we all kind of see this is ridiculous. And then having an ally, of course, around when you kind of approach that questioning thing. But for those of us who are in a place, like Chrissy was saying, we just need to take our own cape off, right? Just every now and then, just take that superwoman cape off. I quit daily. My team knows that. I retire weekly. Like I'm not going to do, we're done. Like I'm done. And so I do give myself that grace that I can pull back. And Chrissy, it ties to something that you said earlier at our team, because then my excellence starts to be tarnished, right? If
Mhm.
I'm out, I can only work so hard, work so fast. And if I'm doing all of this and we're making small little mistakes and it's just not as clean as it needs to be, we're really hurting ourselves anyway. And so it does take some time to get there, but sort of understanding there is a point of diminishing returns. And so
Yes.
whether it's
Yes.
my health, whether it's us as a team and our product, we just can't do that. And so we work really hard here in trying to identify that for each other and with sales. And so if I see one of my employees tapping out, I'm tapping them out. You're done. Go home today. You're done. I saw your schedule. Thank you, but I'm not giving any awards. You're not going to get any higher bonus this year for that. So stop. And my team is very good with that too. Like, Dr. P, let me take that from you. Like, no, I got it. You go, because we're kind of all we have. And we just have to be comfortable and extend that grace to one another.
I struggle with that a little bit because I know how hard I worked in my white spaces and wasn't recognized for it and couldn't say no and was taken for granted and advantage of and all those kind of things. And now I feel like if I could do that there where it wasn't serving what I believe was my calling and I wasn't in a environment of respect or affirmation or whatever else, I'm not going to get here and work for Black people, right? And for the cause and give them any less. So I struggle with that now, right? And then too many people do come either from those systematic structural places and then have entrepreneurship, and you won't even work for yourself as hard as you did for the man, right? Or come into a Black organization like this and give us your lease as opposed to code switching and doing above and beyond for other cultures. And that's a little bit of indoctrination too, but like I think that's a whole nother day and a topic. Let's talk about, because we'll land on what authentic leadership looks like for Black women. But before then, I was on a webinar in COVID, and we heard from someone who's very accomplished Black woman professional. I won't say her name here, but one of the things she shared is that she always has her resume ready. Always, that she's always ready for the next opportunity. And I know that many of us, like my mother worked in the same industry for the 40 years before she retired. Like we're taught to be scared to leave and to close the door and look for something else. But this Black woman who has navigated different employment opportunities so skillfully basically was like, I'm always looking for my elevation, and I'm not as committed to any workplace and what they can give me more so than I'm committed to myself and what I can manifest for myself. So where does that land for Black women who are struggling to have the opportunity they want to have to advance in workplaces? Like, when is enough enough? And when are we willing to move? And what are the benefits or detriments of that?
Enough has to be enough when you are, as a mental health counselor, when you are not mentally well in a space. Like I've mentored individuals where like, I hate my job, and like your entire quality of life is being impacted by your decision. And I get it, we got to pay bills, right? I'm not a trust fund baby. I get it. But when your quality of life is being impacted by somewhere you just don't like, I think that has to be your signal. Hopefully you can see it before then, but that has to be your signal. Like, do not suffer somewhere that is like really harming you mentally. The other signal is, I think you have to push yourself for opportunity. So the idea of staying ready, if you stay ready, you have to get ready, and being okay with it might not work. I've had a job, I went back twice. I left and they hired me back. So if I was great the first time and I can get said job, I can position myself to get another job. I picked up and moved to another state, right? Florida gonna be there. Should I ever need to go back? Well, almost 20 years later, I haven't gone back. And so I think starts with the confidence that you can move on and that you deserve more. And if it doesn't work, go back. Like you can always go backwards in this, and not backwards in a sense, but you can return. And I just went back to the organization and got a higher position. So I left, went to the state, came back, went to the district, got a higher position, and then when I went on my own. But just listening to yourself and your body and your well-being, I think that has to be our sign, because we are just struggling in mental health challenges that we just shouldn't, because we're kind of carrying the weight of the world. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but just giving my sisters take the grace, have the confidence, and just move.
I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna hear from Diamond, don't you leave without no other paycheck set up now, sis. That's one of my mentorship mantras, right? Like, it ain't never that bad. Go on and get your other things set up first and then move. Go ahead, Diamond.
I think it's all in perspective as well, because bouncing from place to place might not necessarily mean unhappiness. It could be from a space of, hey, I know when that annual raise come by, because I got to wait a full year, and you do the evaluation and you got to look at the budget and see who I can promote to what, and you might get your 50 cent. Each year, it's going to be a slow rise up. But when you bounce to companies every 2 to 3 years, you can position yourself for more income. So you might be having bumps, $10 to $20,000 every couple of years versus, 1,000 here, a little bit here and there. So that might be a perspective as well, but it's also in how you speak to that, when the opportunity comes. And some organizations want to know that you have longevity. And so they want you to be loyal. And if that company is really great with employee retention and they pour into the employees and they genuinely do care and they want to keep you, then hey, stick around. Or it might be, I'm not sure what I want to do right now. And so, in order for me to start to define that, I need to get out here and try different things and have new experiences. So, I definitely respect that as well. But you just have to be clear about your why, because sometimes if you are asking for your next position, they may look and say, Well, you were only here for a couple months, or you was here for a year. I'm afraid you might leave me. So I don't even know if I want to waste my time hiring you when I have someone in an interview talking about, hey, I want to help the overall success of the company and hopefully retire here. Because we know it costs a lot to onboard, to teach and
Yes.
train and, take time and, do stuff like that. So I think it is great. Stay afloat, stay on top of your skills, keep learning and keep moving, but really truly understand your why and position yourself there wherever you get there. Know your destination.
Absolutely. Amazing. So we're going to get ready to close out, but we want to give some, I guess, guidance on what authentic leadership can look like for Black women. We know we navigate these barriers. They're not being eradicated probably in our lifetime, right? But we can mitigate them. We can sidestep them. We can climb over top of them. We can do some little things. But if you each could give some closing remarks on how Black women should lead, how they should show up so that they can overcome some of these barriers to advancement in the workplace. And let's start with Diamond.
So I would say show up as your authentic self. The people that spend the most time with you, your staff that's with you 8, 10 hours a day, depending on what you're doing, they start to pick up on it. They can see the real, they can see what's going on. And a lot of times people leave companies because of management, not whether they really like the job or not. They could be having the time of their life, but it's just this person I'm reporting to that I'm just not a fan of. So we got to make sure that we check ourselves, that we are authentic, and that you really are pouring into your employees, making sure that there is a work-life balance, that you do care about things that they have going on, even from, hey, it's their birthday, let me, put balloons in their desk and, all of us, let's write a card and get together and show like, hey, these people actually care about me. And then you lead and not dictate. Hey, I'm delegating certain tasks. I'm leading us. I have this vision and I'm putting people in spaces for them to thrive. So if I know you're really good at speaking and you're not really good on the computer and I have a job for both, I'm not going to hide you over there by the computer and set you up for failure. So making sure that you're able to identify talent, develop talent, put them in spaces to thrive, keep an open door policy, pour into your employees and lead and not dictate.
Mm-hmm. Mika?
I think it would be transparency. And that's something I'm really big with my team on. Like, not only do I do evaluations for them, I have them evaluate me. Like, how am I doing? How am I leading this company? What would you like to see? Where can I improve? And I also think like I lead from my Blackness because again, I've gotten to a place all I can be is a Black woman. So I was born, so I shall die. And so I can't try to do this any other way. And whenever I try to, it doesn't fit. Like, when somebody's like faking, you can see it. And so being able to embrace like, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to lead, this is why I'm doing this, just being completely transparent, I think is very important. And just like knowing that the quote that is running in my head, which is what I keep looking at, I stand on the shoulders. I come as one. Oprah said this, but I stand on the shoulders of 10,000. And so when I show up, I know I show up for my team, I show up for my family, I show up for the culture. And so Dr. Reddit says, show up like the paparazzi's outside. And don't tell me that but one time, because I hear my theme music, right? I got
I
all
know
my
that's right.
staff, they have a theme song. And so, like you were saying, Chrissy, that excellence, show up in that excellence all the time. And that's what I try to do as a leader. Because I think like that's what I owe my team, that's what I owe my people. And when they see me, they can't think Shanae. They're gonna associate my name and my team with greatness, because that's what we are.
Amen. Well, thank you both so much for today's conversation. We could have gone on another hour. It has been so wonderful to hear your lived experiences and your insights on this topic. And we just want to make sure that all that join also got some nuggets from you all today. Certainly leading from your identity, culture, community, lived experience are strengths of ours. They're not liabilities. And we need to figure out our why. Success is not just being in proximity to what someone will give or grant you, right? Sometimes it's changing the game altogether. And so thank you all for joining us today for Equity at Work. Next month in June, we'll be discussing redesigning workplace policies for racial equity. Look at us, still talking about DEI in 2025. For Associated Black Charities, I am Chrissy Thornton. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.